Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 21 of Parenting Autism.
Hello, hello.
We've been away for a little bit because we've had a busy, fun summer adventure in the month of July.
We went to Canada,
We did go to Canada,
and only one person said A.
That's true. Only one waiter said it, and we kind of giggled at each other.
Yep.
We went to Maine. We went to Canada. I had a wonderful time with some friends up there and got to explore the coastline, and it was pretty amazing. And Bryce did fantastic.
Yes, he did.
He really did. He enjoyed it. And
he was without his iPad the whole time.
The iPad was on vacation while we were on vacation.
It was very nice.
Yeah, and it was cute because we told him he was on vacation and that he'd get it when we were coming back. So he was very excited when they got reunited at the airport.
Yes.
It was really cute. But yeah, so we haven't been able to do a podcast in a few weeks, but we wanted to kind of knock one out. And actually, you didn't want me to tell you what was laid on my heart, so surprise.
Here it goes.
But no, I really have been thinking about this, and I think we should share with the audience really how autism has shaped our faith.
Okay.
And that's really just the topic, the title, the conversation I like us to have.
Okay.
And it's kind of sharing with, those who are listening. And, should I ask you questions? Do you want to ask me questions? How would you like to lay this out?
Yes.
Yes?
I mean, since it's on your heart, you probably have some idea of what road you want to go down. So I'll let you start it out, and I can either chime in or answer questions.
Okay. Well, we can do that for sure. I was just thinking about how lately I have been struggling a little bit with worrying about Bryce going to school. And it's probably where all this is kind of coming into my mind.
Yes, you were a little nervous because we had not received anything from the public school about his enrollment. And I was 90% sure that he was enrolled, but I just wanted to make the extra step since you brought it up to make sure that he was, and he is.
Yeah. And I don't know, that was one thing on my mind, but I think I'm talking a little deeper than that. Like, how is he going to do in school? Did we make the right decision? Was that clearly God's plan for him? How well is he doing? We're trying to streamline him, and it's that kind of stuff that I have to just
self-talk.
Yeah. And then when we were in church on Sunday, and I heard the message and the verse came up about my ways, are not your ways. And, God talks about that in Isaiah. And he was just reminding me, my ways are not your ways. And I've got the big plan, and just trust the plan. And that's really what I have done on this autism journey.
Well, as far as school's concerned, I feel like we were in prayer about the whole school situation. And personally, I don't feel like I had a definitive answer to prayer. I was leaning toward the private school with the smaller classroom size, and you were leaning toward the public school. And when you brought up all of the advantages or things that were on your mind about why it would be better for him to go to public school, I thought all of those were valid points. And I think I shifted over to your side because, again, we say, pick your battles. And that's not one that I was really felt strong enough to pick a battle over. So I leaned toward your way, and you had a lot of good points. And so
it's kind of funny because, I didn't see it as a battle, but I know what you're saying. Like when you feel strong on have a strong opinion on something.
Right.
And I really was in specific prayer about it. And I had really prayed that morning very specifically, Lord, just make it really clear which way you're supposed to go, and make it clear to both of us so that I will know. And it was within minutes that you texted me and said, he's going to Windmill Point.
So
like within minutes. So I was like, okay, I don't know what swung him, but okay, I feel at peace now. So that's why, like, those are the kind of things that kind of help shape my faith. Autism does shape it, because I believe that God is right here and wants us to talk to him like I'm talking to you. And he wants us to bring things to him. And he is our Heavenly Father. And like any parent, just as we want Bryce to be happy and do what's best for him, he wants us to be happy and he wants to do what's best for us. Just like we know the bigger picture because we're more experienced, we know things that are better for Bryce than he realizes. Same thing with God. He created us. He does know the big picture. And so sometimes we can't see it, or we think one way might be better, but he knows that another way is better, even though we can't see it. And I've just stopped questioning why, for the most part. I don't really question anymore.
Here we are just a couple of weeks away of the start of school. And Bryce has progressed a lot through the summer with being off of gluten and casein. He has more words and sentences, and he's thinking differently. And so it's all encouraging, even though he's made this, I'd say it's a small leap. I don't know if it's going to be good enough for mainstream kindergarten with an assistant or whatever you call it.
We don't know.
So I think we're going to find out pretty quickly from the teacher.
We will.
I'd say within weeks that, either he can grasp the concepts and pay attention enough, or something else.
Yeah. So that's just like one minor example of how, autism is continuing to find ways to shape my faith. But I feel like I just want to share a little backstory. So, where my faith began, and, a little bit of my testimony. And I have learned in my life that sometimes there's no testimony unless there's a test. There's some truth to that. But when I was a child, I didn't grow up in church. My parents didn't go. My mom would send us on Easter with my aunts who went to the local church there in town. I lived in a really small town in Indiana. And then when I was in fourth grade, my parents, they accepted Christ as their Savior, and they started going to church. And so then our family started going. And so at a, relatively early age, I was 9, when I started going to church, and when I understood, that I had a need for forgiveness and repentance. And I said that prayer of forgiveness. Of course, I did what I knew to do then, but I did not understand having a relationship with God, And then I grew up in church, and actually my dad was called to ministry 2 years later, and that's what moved us from Indiana to Florida, because he took a job at a church here in the area where we live. And so I switched schools in 7th grade, and I went to Christian school actually from 5th grade to the time that I graduated. And then, I was discovering my own faith. I always stayed in church. Even when I moved away, I'd gotten married early when I was 18 after high school, and had moved away to Philadelphia, which is how I became an Eagles fan. My husband at that time was stationed in the military, and we were in Philly. And so, I did go to church there. I always had kept my faith, as far as like being active and looking forward to going to church and growing in Christ and that sort of thing. But I also had my stumbles, and I did go through a rocky marriage that taught me a lot. And then I went through a divorce, and divorce is hard enough, but it's even more difficult under the scrutiny of church and God and other Christians, especially the way I was raised. And while my parents were very understanding because they knew what I was going through. There were plenty of other people in the church that didn't know what I was enduring and were very judgmental about it. You know, those kind of things were shaping me in my life. And I had a tough time in my 20s finding my security enough in myself, because I rebounded to a different relationship, and that didn't end well either. And that was marriage and divorce number 2. That somebody didn't turn out being who I thought they were. And that shaped me in another way. And then one other person that I didn't marry, but somebody that, again, kind of fooled me. Thank God that my eyes were open to that and I revealed the truth. But that was in my early 30s. And that really set me to the point that I knew I had to do something different in my life. And it was not having my love and my security found in a marital relationship or in a man. I needed to find it in Christ, in God, and in myself. You know, whatever was empty, I was seeking. So that's when you kind of came along into my life. And, you know, when we first met, you did want to date. And I was like, no, you don't want to date me. I was kind of a hot mess at that time. But what I was really trying to do was get my heart where it needed to be with Christ and get my relationship right. And so that's when I started singing in the church. And then you started going to church. And that's really when you gave your life to Christ, was at that time. And so it's good that we met at that time in my life. And again, that's where God knows the big picture, and he knows his ways are better than our ways. Because had I met you any time before that, you wouldn't have been in a position to be available for me, and I wouldn't have been in a position to be ready to at least be friends with you and us start our journey together.
He knows perfect timing.
He does know perfect timing, and you had your own history of...
I had my own issues.
You had your own issues and relationship problems that you had as well. And so when we did meet, it was kind of like, hey, if you help me understand guys, I'll help you understand women. That was kind of our agreement, and it worked out really well. And we had picked up that book, Purpose Driven Life by Rick Warren, and you would come over every Monday night, and we had our own little book club, and we read those chapters, and we went through it, and we were really trying to find our purpose in life. Yeah. Not even together, like we were trying to find it together, but not as if we were going to live it together. I should say it that way. And I think at that point, that's when my faith really deepened. And I started to really talk to God more and lean into him more than leaning into love, whoever my love interest was at that time, or whatever man that was in my life that I was trying to please. Because
I think we both
I'm a pleaser.
realized at that time that we needed relationship help before we got into another relationship. And that had to come from God.
Yes. Yeah. And I think we watched each other continue to even struggle with some relationships, not with each other, but still figuring that out. So, you know, during that time, that was a really good 2-3 year period for me to just get my feet on the solid rock, get my heart right where it needed to be, and really to forgive myself, because God had forgiven me for mistakes I had made and choices I, had made as well. And some things were within my control, and some things honestly were not within my control. But, I had to be able to forgive myself and love myself before I could move further into any kind of relationship. And then you and I, it just kind of developed, and our friendship really did just grow into love. So it's a really beautiful story there. It really helped that we kind of were figuring this out with our faith at the same time. And while I have a much deeper rooted Christian experience in my life, because you didn't go to Christian school and you didn't grow up in church and memorize all the Bible verses that I did and, all of that. But I've watched you grow, and I think God needed to give me the deep roots to help you when the storms were going to hit our lives, because the storms were coming. We just didn't know that they were coming.
Yeah, I think I lean or look to you a lot for. I had a lot of questions in a lot of different situations, and you had those answers because you knew the Bible better than I did. Mm-hmm. So that was always just refreshing to know that there was an answer to my question and you had the answer. And it just helped me navigate through that. And when we got hit with the storm when Bryce was born.
I was going to say we were hit with the storm before Bryce was born and with the loss of the first baby. Mm-hmm. And I really look at all this and I think how this has shaped us, because honestly, having gone through failed marriages, that does shape your faith, mm-hmm. right? I mean, it really does. It takes a lot to, like I said, to forgive yourself and accept God's forgiveness and know that He can still use you and that you can still have a purpose in life. I struggled with that.
A little different spiritual position than you were when you went through what you went through. Like, my divorces happened before I was saved.
Right.
And so that, I always believed that there was a God, but I never had a relationship with Him. And I did question God whenever I went through my 2 divorces. Mm-hmm. And, why is this happening? But I had no relationship with Him. I knew He was there around. Mm-hmm. And, I'm like, why me? Because,
you're a good guy.
Your first person that you fall in love with, in my case anyway, I thought that's the person that you're supposed to spend the rest of your life with. And I don't know why I thought that. Maybe I don't know.
Because it's kind of true. It's that's what I believe too.
It's something that you've never felt before, and you just feel this connection, and you're like, oh, I'm going to live happily ever after now, and I'll find a house with a white picket fence somewhere, and live happily ever after with beautiful sunsets. And so when all that crumbles, the second time it crumbled for me, I was at the bottom. And Bridget invited me to church and to go with her and Chad. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, that's I think that's what I need, because this out here in this world, nothing's clicking.
Yeah.
And so that's when I developed my relationship with Christ, and that really prepared me for what laid ahead. Yeah, the mountains and the valleys.
Yeah, so after we first got married, actually, there were a lot of white picket fences and sunsets. So it seemed. I say that, but we really were enjoying life, and we were able to do a lot of traveling together. And I had just left my career at the bank to just kind of explore my photography, and was in a happy place with all of that. And then I went back to the bank for a couple years, and probably the first storm that came through our marriage would have been when the bank moved me out of mortgage lending, which was my strength and what I was hired for, into becoming a branch manager. Put me in 2 branches with goals set up for failure. Mm-hmm. In a 2008, 2009, when the economy of the United States was failing as it was. Mm-hmm. And so then when they closed our branches, there went our income, pretty much.
Yeah, when a new regime comes into a bank, a lot of times they like to switch things up to where they bring in their own crew.
Exactly.
And they like to switch things up.
If you're not on with their game plan, then you're off.
Right.
You're off the team.
Yeah, you're off the team, yes.
So, that was it was really good learning lessons for me, and it really was. And it also shaped my faith, because I had to really give a lot of grace and pray for a lot of forgiveness. Mm-hmm. And I had to be very aware of keeping a good testimony, because it would have been very easy to become bitter, to become angry, because I was not treated
No.
In a professional way.
affecting my testimony for sure.
It was. I know you wanted to go hurt somebody. So, we went through all that. But again, shaping the faith, making me stronger. And I always, always say, God gives us lessons and we have to learn them. And if we don't learn them, he's going to give it to you again. And if you don't learn it, he's going to give it to you again, because he's giving you that lesson to learn, to prepare you for what he knows is lying ahead. Mm-hmm. We don't know why, but we know, something's out there. So this is really where it's shaped how I think today. But yeah, so then, that was storm number one. But we turned those lemons into lemonade and said, hey, if it's going to be the case, let's dive in and let's do the photography full time. Yeah, no more dipping our toes in the water. So we did it. And obviously it adjusted our finances and stuff. But then we said, hey, we have the freedom now that we can travel. Let's go to Alaska for a month. Mm-hmm. Let's advertise out there, find some families to photograph, write off the trip, and enjoy it.
And it worked.
And we did. And we've made great friends, from out there. Actually. And we actually went back the following year. So, we just kind of learned to roll with those punches, take what you're given, find God's will in it and move forward. And then, the next storm that came right after that was when we lost your mom and with her cancer. And, we brought her here to stay with us. And she was in remission, at that time. And then the cancer came back and we just had her for a few weeks. But praise God, he brought her here and we were able to really spend lots of quality time with her, her last few months that she was here. So, that was a storm. And that was a storm for me to be there for you, because you had already lost your dad when we first started dating.
And I had the colon
and you had your colon resection surgery right when we first started dating. So actually we had storms pre-marriage.
Yeah.
Then we had a few mountains, and then we had a couple more storms. So you're right. All that was kind of shaping.
It was stormy.
And it was stormy. And, that's life. You have highs, you have lows, you have mountains, you have valleys. Yeah. But how you go through them and how you deal with them is what shapes you for the next one. And that's really my core message here today. And that's why I'm just kind of sharing in a nutshell version what we've gone through to get us to where we are today. Yeah. But yeah, when you lost your mom, I have both my parents, so I really can't even relate. And it hurts my heart to even think about losing my parents. So, I understand talking to other friends and to you, when it's one thing when you lose one, but when you lose the second one, it's a harder hit, because now you don't, it's kind of like you lost
connection. Lost,
right?
Yeah.
At least you had your mom, when your dad wasn't here, and you have your brothers, but still it's like, it's not your parents, and that's hard,
There's no replacement for your parents. It's just, it is what it is.
It is. And you've actually handled it really, really well. I know you have your sad moments, and you're always going to have that, but
I think whenever you think about your parents on any kind of level that are gone, you do get somewhat sad. I mean, obviously you wish they were still here and you could ask them questions and do things with them and all that. But
I know we were talking last night about this, just because I was just asking questions about your childhood and stuff, because I said we can always still learn about each other, and I asked if you think about them often, and you said not too much because it makes you sad. But then I was like, well, maybe we can think of like happy memories. And so we were kind of reminiscing on some times when we were laughing really hard at her house playing games and stuff. And I think that's my optimism, but that's what I think of. Like, I've lost a couple people very, very dear to me. And that's where my mind goes.
I think my mind and myself, I just keep busy, and I like being busy. I like accomplishing things, and I don't really have a lot of time to, you
probably try to prevent time to dwell on
to think about those types of things.
I understand.
So I think the biggest test that we had after we got married for me was when Bryce was born, and he was diagnosed with a brain hemorrhage, and that that was a defining moment in my life with my faith. You either run away from God or you run to God. And there was a lot of questions as to why something like this would happen to us. And we had a lot of time to think. You know, he was in the NICU, and we spent 10 days down there. It sounds like a short time, but it's an eternity when you don't know if your son's going to live. And we were staying a block away from the hospital, so we spent a lot of time in the NICU with him. And you ask God why. You know, why is this happening? All I could think about is I just want to fast forward 5 years from now and see how he is and see how Bryce is, you know. And I just kept saying that over and over again. Lord, I just want to fast forward just to see how he's going to do, or what he's going to be like. And I leaned on him hard for that. You know, it could have been very easy for me to just go into a deep depression and deep sadness during that time. And, you know, there were ups and downs each day, but he was a rock for me in a big way. And he brought me through that for sure. Like, without my faith, it would have been really bad news for me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when I talk about like God seeing the big picture that we don't see, I could go back to 2009 when they came in and they laid me off from my job. You know, and I had been in banking for 20 years, and I had a really very successful, good career. And but God knew that fast forward, we were going to get pregnant. We were going to have a child, and we were going to need to be able to spend time with him. Mm-hmm. And had I still been in my career, the way I was working, you know, mm-hmm. at that time, I would not have been able to just stop and do that without it affecting my job. Yeah. I mean, I could have quit, but you know what I mean? Like, I did think about all that later. I'm like, wow, he really just set us up and prepared us for all of that.
Some jobs and bosses are not very open to having family come first in those situations. Right. And, you know, I can, you relate to that. Yes, I relate to that, you know, working open to close and not getting very many days off, and then having them find a lemon-sized tumor in my colon, and then I go into the hospital and have that surgery, and then, you know, my work's calling, when are you coming back? When are you coming back? Or when my dad passed away, you know, I went over to see him when he was so sick in the hospital. And, you know, it really wasn't about how's your dad doing, take as much time as you need. Boy, that would have been a blessing. But instead it was like, we need you back here. You know, when are you coming back? Yeah. And that says a lot about your employer. You know, I understand that I was an important part of the wheel there, you know, and without me, yes, things are more difficult, but you know what? You figure out how to work around that until the storm passes, you know, and I wasn't gone that long, you know, it just, for them, it was too much.
I know.
And that's when I realized that
you made a career change.
Yeah.
You chose life.
Yeah.
Over work. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, having done that, it set you up for years later when we would need to have that flexibility. And, you know, I brought you on board to do photography with me full time. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And we had actually blocked out, we had budgeted and saved and planned that we could take 2 months off after Bryce was born, having no idea that part of that time would be spent in Miami and then coming back and adjusting to everything.
Yeah.
But, God knew. He prepared our hearts to do that, which was very wise. And, so it's just all that, I just always look back, like even, like I said, when I'm thinking present time and little seeds of doubt come in my mind, like, ooh, is he going to be okay? Is he going to be okay in his classroom? And did we make the right decision? And so I know there's always going to be some kinds of doubt, which is natural, but I have to remember that God is in control. And that's really the message that he's giving me right now. And, I know what you were saying, which is so true, that when Bryce had his brain hemorrhage and, it really was touch and go. We didn't know if he was going to make it or not. And that was shaping your faith. I had a different kind of calm at that point because I think it affected me a little bit more when we had the miscarriage the year before. Mm-hmm. Because at that point, I couldn't understand why after 43 years, I could get pregnant, hear a heartbeat, see the baby. I didn't feel the baby in my womb, but I knew the baby was in me. Trust me, I was feeling all the nauseousness. I just knew I had life inside of me. And I knew when the life stopped. I felt the difference. And that was really hard for me. And I think that's when I felt myself begin to spiral into a depression. Not deep, but like I could see the dark in my peripheral vision. It was coming. And I had, even though I knew it was God's will and I had prayed for God's will and I accepted it, there was still some whys and a lot of crying for me with that. And then I just realized, you know what? He has the bigger plan. He knows that our baby was so sick. I mean, had he gone full term, boy, would we have had a whole different situation.
And he probably wouldn't have lived.
Have lived, I mean, typically more than a day, And now I learned later, 5 weeks later, I got pregnant with Bryce. If God had not taken Malachi when he took him, then my cycle wouldn't have come back when it did. And that sperm and that egg wouldn't have connected when they did. And we wouldn't have Bryce. So, I just have to remember, he knows the big picture. He created us all. He knows how he created us. He knows why he created us. I definitely believe we each have a purpose. I now know that, we shaping my faith, then we get pregnant with Bryce. Everything was great. When he had his brain hemorrhage and it was like, they're telling us, well, we think he's going to live, but it's probably going to be with cerebral palsy. I just remember saying, it's okay. I can handle whatever disability there may be. I just want him to live. That's how I felt. Mm-hmm. And I think even with Malachi, God started preparing my heart because he was trisomy 18. And we knew that should he live, that would be a major undertaking of a disability.
I think that hit you especially hard because you had that relationship with Malachi being in your womb.
Right.
And I was sad when we got the news that he had trisomy 18 and we knew what that was going to look like if he was born.
Yes.
And we prayed about that.
Yes.
And we knew that we weren't going to have an abortion, that we were going to go full term. And when God took him, there was half of me was in a sense of relief that it was so much better for him to be in a better place than to come into this world and have all of these things done to him by doctors.
Yeah.
And again, I didn't know why all that happened. I'm like, well, it was definitely a surprise when we were pregnant. And I'm like, okay, well, why would he take that away from us? Why did that? And then you run through your mind, well, do we want to get pregnant again? Is something else going to happen? All these things go through your mind.
Yes. Yeah. All that was going through. So that was hard. And you're right. It affected you more with Bryce because
I held him.
You held him. He was perfectly fine for that first day.
For the first day.
Everything.
He might have been having seizures that first day. We just didn't know it.
If he did, we certainly had no idea.
But I held him. I was singing to him. And
he was nursing. He slept in our room.
Yep. And then he went to the baby ward.
The next morning. And then
that was it.
And again, God saw the big picture on that. Had it happened in our room while we were sleeping, he wouldn't have survived. I mean, the doctor was there exactly when it happened. We could see God's hand and his fingerprints on everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's what gave me so much peace, because I just had to trust him. I had to.
And when the doctor said, when we left Miami Children's Hospital with Bryce to bring him home, he says, God is with you. You know, I was like, well, there's an angel from God just telling me that. And coming from a doctor, no less. And I was just like, I knew he was there all along, just guiding us through all that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's it. And I think he really shaped our faith to be stronger. He's definitely taught me by this point in my life, just know he has the answers. You know, don't over question it. Don't overthink it. Make sure you've done all you can do. As in how I talk to myself. If I've done all that I can do, then I've done all I can do, and the rest is in God's hands. You know, every now and then we'll have the conversation, have we done enough? Are we doing enough? But if we have and we are, then it's going to be what it's going to be. And that's why I think by the time the autism diagnosis came, it just didn't punch me in the gut as hard as I know other parents have felt that punch. And maybe because they didn't quite have the storms that we've had, or maybe because they didn't have the faith that had been strengthened by storms. Because that's what happens when you go through a storm. You get deeper rooted. You know, that's the goal anyway. Because it's like you said, you either turn to God or you run from God.
Our faith was strong when he was diagnosed, but it did not prevent us from just getting a sick feeling in our stomach and being sad about it.
Well, I'm not saying I wasn't sad.
And overwhelmed.
But it's you and I. But it's different because we're kind of talking me and you. So I think for you, it actually affected you a little more than it affected me.
I don't know about that. Remember when they were evaluating him?
I did cry.
Yes. And
then after that, I was sad for him.
You were sad.
I was sad. Well, so I guess there's a difference. Like, there's being punched in the gut, like you're completely shocked, and how in the world did this happen? Maybe I'm just thinking, of course it is, a few years later, but I just don't remember feeling that despair. But I definitely was sad. I was sad for him. I felt like after all he has gone through, really, I didn't see that coming. I didn't see that coming. But I didn't spend a lot of time afterwards, like, why, God, why? Which is good.
We didn't do that. We
didn't.
were just overwhelmed with
I'm
all
like,
of the
how,
information.
God, how? Like, how are we supposed to, deal with this? And what is the plan here? And even this podcast is part of our calling, and I believe that. And I do now believe, it's ironically enough, that our relationship started with the purpose-driven life and figuring out what our purpose is. And I feel like God has called us to be Bryce's parents to help us understand autism more in a world that's becoming more and more prevalent with autistic children that are becoming autistic teens and adults, to really help share Bryce's story and our story so that people can learn. And that would be Bryce in the background. Hold on, here he comes. Hey! Oh, what happened? Oh, thank you for the kisses.
Bryce.
My name's not Bryce. What's my name?
Plug it in, please.
What's my name?
Plug it in.
What's my name?
Plug it in,
My name's Plug It In, please.
Say hi to everybody, Bryce.
Can you say hi?
Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
Hi, Josh.
Bryce, where are we going on Saturday, Bryce?
You can't go on Saturday with the Space Center.
Are you going to the Space Center?
Well, it's not safe.
It's safe.
Safe.
No, you can't.
Or do you want to see the rocket launch?
No, you can't.
You can't. Do you want to see the big white rocket go up in the sky? Yes or no?
No.
No? You changed your mind?
No, you can't. Oh, it has hexagons.
Only hexagons?
Yeah, they have the hexagon lights there.
Oh, okay.
Check on the hexagon.
You want to step on the hexagon?
Bryce, do you want to plug it in your back?
Bryce, do you want to...
It helps to keep it safe for you.
Oh, will the iPad help keep you safe? Is that what you're telling me?
Do you want to wear your headphones for the rocket launch?
That'll keep you safe.
You can't watch a rocket launch.
No? Okay.
Okay.
We'll talk about it more later.
All right. Tell everybody bye.
Bye.
I think he's changed his tune a little bit from a few days ago. He was very excited to see a rocket launch. And we saw one on Monday. And the Space Center is getting pretty busy down here now with all the commercial rocket launches. And so it wasn't as much of the rocket launch that bothered him. It was the clapping that everybody did when the rocket took off. So I didn't... I had the headphones in the truck, but I didn't bring them into the Space Center because we're going to be in the Space Center for hours before the rocket launch, and I didn't want to lug them around, and I knew he wouldn't need them in the Space Center. And then when we came outside, they had the big screen TV, and everybody was there watching the rocket, and for whatever reason, I didn't think that there was going to be a lot of clapping, but there was, and that upset him. And then when he saw the rocket come up above the building there, he was very excited about that. And then when it came back down to land on the landing pad, the rocket booster, he was excited. And when we talked about it afterwards, he said it was loud. And we said, what was loud? And he said it was loud clapping, because I think the clapping was actually louder than the rocket itself, because the rocket was, I don't know, probably 6, 7, 8 miles away from where we were at the Space Center, the launch pad. And so when we got the sound, first we saw the rocket go up, because sound travels slower than light, so we saw the rocket first, and then here comes the sound. But it wasn't really loud. It was more of the clapping that was too loud for him. And so now we know, if we watch another launch, to bring the headphones for the clapping. And so I guess now he's changed his mind that he doesn't even want to go up there at all. But we'll talk to him more about that.
Yeah, and that's what he'll do. He'll say one day he's ready. And then, he'll have that anxiety, and then you just have to work him through it, and then he'll be fine. But he definitely he's learned to talk more, and he's expressing more. Things are dangerous and not safe. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like everything almost is dangerous or not safe in his mind.
Yeah, and he's starting to be able to tell us why he thinks that, too. So that's exciting for us.
We are excited.
Yeah.
That's a new development, which has just been happening in the past few weeks. And I mean, he did tell me the other night that he couldn't go to bed, and I said, why can't you go to bed? He says, it's dangerous. I go, why is it dangerous? He said, there's fire in the bed. Okay, there's not fire in the bed. Show me where it is. And then he pointed to a spot, and I pretended it was an extinguisher, and I'm like, okay, we're putting out the fire, so, you're getting into bed. So, but then sometimes it's legit, and he said because he was hitting his head on the headboard, which was true, but that's because he was hitting his head into the headboard,
yeah.
So...
accidentally.
Yeah. And I think he was really trying to stall because he didn't want to go to bed.
Right.
So you can kind of tell.
That's...
But he definitely does have anxiety issues.
Yeah.
But so anyway, that was good that Bryce came in, because I was ready to wrap that up anyway. I was just saying, that I feel like autism has continued and continues to help me with my faith, because even though that initial diagnosis, and you're right, I think I felt maybe I was punched so many other times before. Maybe it was just another punch. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
In that way. Not any harder than the others. That's probably how I really meant that. It just caused more tears. I wasn't expecting it, but I had already been punched with a miscarriage, punched with the brain hemorrhage, and now a punch with the autism. And it was like, okay, at this point, yes, I'm sad, but what are we going to do? And, each time I feel like I start to, I want to say worry, because I don't worry very often, but I have my own little anxieties come up, and I start feeling that physically, like I was feeling it last week, like in my chest and stuff. Then that's when I know, oh, I got to give this back to God. I'm taking on a little too much. He has the plan. It's going to be okay. Just listen and watch for the signs, and he will speak. Listen to the messages, get into the word, find those things. And so I really am very grateful that I have my faith. I don't know how I would get through life without it. And I'm so grateful that you and I share the same beliefs, and we do share this faith, and that we've grown together to the Lord this year, in all of our studies, and grown closer together. It's really been a good year in that way for us in 2019.
I think having faith is a key component to be able to survive autism, in my opinion.
For me personally, it is a key element.
Yes. I mean, I think we would be struggling in so many more areas if we didn't have the faith that we have.
Yes.
And, a lot of couples, unfortunately, they don't make it through autism. They get divorced because of autism in the family. And
I can see how that can happen.
Yes. And it's sad.
It is sad. If you're not on the same page, mm-hmm. and you're not in agreement on parenting styles. And
there's a lot of pages to be on the same.
And if one stays in denial while the other one's trying to deal with it.
It's hard.
That is hard.
It's really hard.
So. I'm very grateful just to where we are today, how far along God has brought us on this journey. And, I think about Jeremiah 29:11, which is a fairly popular scripture, but it talks about, I know my plans for you, my plans to help you prosper. And I think about that for Bryce, and I think about the scripture where he talks about how he made us in our mother's womb. He knows the hairs on our head. He knows everything about Bryce. He created him. So while we don't understand him, and we don't, and we're learning his thoughts and how he processes information and what his genuine fears are and what he likes and what he loves and what he responds to. We're learning that, but God knows all of that. Mm-hmm. So if we just keep asking God to show us in his time, and it's all about timing, if he reveals to us in his perfect timing what we need to know for Bryce, then we're going to be okay. Yeah. And that's just kind of like where I'm going to leave that.
And I feel like maybe there's somebody out there that maybe does want to know, what we do as far as our faith. What church do we attend? What does that look like? And you can see our church messages online. It's at gochristfellowship.com. And
it's actually live on Saturdays and Sundays.
On Facebook?
Yes.
And on the website?
Yes, both.
So, if you're skeptical about attending physically at a church, by all means, just watch it on the website and get the message that they're delivering, because every week is a different message, and they're all great. And
they are. They very much apply to our day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. I always take something from it. I'm always encouraged afterwards. And I know that having a child on the spectrum, it's not easy to attend a church unless they have the right facilities and caregivers for you. So being able to have it online and to be able to watch the messages. And if you watch live, you can actually, hear the music and actually get the praise and worship as well, and get the message. So, we definitely we'll put the in the show notes, I will put the links on there.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to, visit that would be great.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people out there, they feel like they're stuck at home on a Sunday because there aren't churches in their area that have a special needs ministry. I mean, we're just so thankful that our church, they have a buddy ministry, and it's a one-on-one ministry for these special needs kids. And it's so wonderful that we can go there physically and attend church, and not have to worry about our son because we know he's in good hands. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, and I'm really excited. We get affirmations about things that we're supposed to do, and when we were up in Canada, we met multiple families that had children on the spectrum, and it was amazing. But it was almost like, your tribe, and then we'd have a conversation and be like, yep, us too, yep, me too, and then so now we have our little business cards to hand out because this is what we want. We want to connect with other families that may need encouragement from us and that we may need encouragement from them, learn from each other, share with each other, and as well as people that just want to understand our world more that don't even have children on the spectrum. So all right, we better go attend to our little guy out there.
Yeah, it's about time for his bedtime anyway.
It is.
So.
But so anyway, thanks for chatting with me about this tonight, babe. I love you. And
I love you. I'm glad you brought it up, and we didn't talk about it beforehand. It was all fresh, and that was cool. Yeah, it was very good, and I'm just so grateful for living life with you, and grateful that we're get to with God to do this together with God. Yeah. All right, so everybody have a great night. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll be back again with another episode soon. Peace out. Signing off. See ya.